Alexander Hamilton took a stand in history against the stereotyping of illegitimacy by proving that in America, success is not just defined by a person's power and wealth, but by their talent and persistence. This is shown in the many papers that Hamilton wrote, which majorly influenced the American government that we know today. It is also shown in the political positions that he held in America, which would not have been held by an illegitimate child in Europe at that time. In the 1700s, illegitimate children were looked down upon. They were treated as lesser. Illegitimacy had always been stigmatized in English society. Since the 17th and 18th centuries, the negative attitude toward bastards was evident in legislation which denied them assistance from the poor rates. In England, illegitimate children were looked on as mere garbage, regardless of the status of their fathers. As a result, many of the justices appointed to make sure these illegitimates were looked after often neglected to do so. After all, who really cared about a piece of garbage? Needless to say, such scorned children were not deemed fit to hold public office. Most people know of Alexander Hamilton as the founding father who invented our bank system. But what a lot of them do not know is that he was an illegitimate orphan who immigrated from the Caribbean island of St. Croix. Alexander was the son of James Hamilton Sr. and Rachel Fawcett Levion. The circumstances of Alexander Hamilton's birth portended at best an indifferent future. Rachel's husband divorced her and her children, leaving the family penniless. Shortly after Hamilton's father left them, his mother died. He and his brother James went to live with their mother's cousin. Shortly after, the cousin was found dead in his own bed. Alexander then went to live with Thomas Stevens, a prosperous businessman. Stevens must also have recognized that Hamilton was a prodigy with an aptitude for business. Oppositely, it was Hamilton's early experience in business that first turned his attention to the American colonies and to New York in particular. Stevens' firm exported sugar and rum there, and young Hamilton represented the firm's interests consciously. Stevens wanted to send Alexander to New York for a better education. Hugh Knox, an Anglican clergyman at Christianized St. Croix, started a subscription to send Hamilton to New York. Alexander would always feel indebted to him. From 1773 to 1774, he lived with Elias Bednoe, a future president of the Continental Congress, and studied at Presbyterian Academy in Elizabethtown, New Jersey. In this period, Hamilton socialized with such future patriots and political leaders as William Livingston, Richard Stockton, Philip Schuyler, and Henry Brockhouse Livingston. Hamilton attended King's College, present-day Columbia University. He excelled in English composition, Greek, and Latin, completing 3 years' study in one. In March 1776, Hamilton dropped out of college to become an artillery captain in the New York militia. He quickly came to the attention of senior officers, and in 1777, he joined George Washington's staff. Alexander was the longest-lasting aide-de-camp to Washington. He was the only aide to be an illegitimate child. As Washington's aide, Alexander got a different view of the states. It was during this time when he saw each state arguing over minimal issues that he became a committed nationalist. Most of all, Hamilton simply wrote hundreds, ultimately thousands of pages, orders, letters, reorganization plans, essays on the strategic situation, speculative ideas for ways to finance the war, the occasional political tract, seated at his desk, day after day, the weeks turning into years. These were not only the papers that Alexander wrote. He, along with two other people, John Jay and James Madison, wrote the Federalist Papers. These papers are a collection of essays composed to influence our government and economy. There must be interwoven in the frame of government a general power of taxation in one shape or another. Hamilton argues that without taxation, one of two evils must ensue. Either the people must be subjected to continual plunder as a substitute for a more eligible mode of supplying the public wants, or the government must sink into a fatal atrophy and, in a short course of time, perish. These were very bold words due to the fact that one of the main reasons that the colonies broke away from England was the way the king was taxing them. Hamilton's system of government was modeled after Britain's, which he claimed to be the best in the world. Senators and a national governor would be chosen by special electors and would serve for life. Members of an assembly would be elected directly by citizens. Each member would serve a 3-year term. State governors would be chosen by the national governor. Alexander also played a big role in creating our judicial system. There is not a syllable in the plan under the consideration which directly empowers the national courts to construe the laws according to the spirit of the Constitution. This does not allow our court justices to change the law for personal need. In England, many times the justices would change the law for personal need or profit. This allowed wealthy people to bribe justices to interpret the law different so they would not be charged as heavily or at all. Hamilton died on July 12, 1804, from a gunshot wound received from a duel with Aaron Burr. The duel took place on July 11, 1808. However, the events leading up to the duel started many years earlier. In 1791, Hamilton's father-in-law, Philip Schuyler, lost his Senate seat to Burr. Hamilton responded, calling Burr unprincipled and dangerous. This was just the beginning. Hamilton had recently written a document bashing John Adams, who, because of Hamilton's illegitimacy, referred to him publicly as a bastard. Burr made this otherwise private document public, which was very embarrassing for Hamilton. After all, even though he had risen above the stigma facing illegitimate children, it was still a fact that haunted him throughout his career. This made the friendship between Hamilton and Burr even weaker. The final push that made Burr challenge Hamilton was when Burr ran for president. When Hamilton heard that the Federalist Party was backing Burr, he was infuriated. He professed to have a despicable opinion of Burr, and he worked hard to oppose Burr's election. At a dinner party, he said that Burr was a dangerous man who ought not to be trusted with the reins of government. One of the guests at the party, Dr. Charles D. Cooper, quoted Hamilton in a letter. That letter eventually found its way into a newspaper where Burr saw it. Burr was infuriated and challenged Alexander to a duel. On July 11, 1804, Burr's second gave the command, "Present." Both guns were raised, and 2 shots rang out. Alexander, as was a common practice among gentlemen, discarded his shot by sending the bullet straight up into the air. However, before Burr could realize what had happened, he had fired directly into Hamilton's ribs. Hamilton's legacy still lives on today. This can be seen in our government and our economy. Hamilton rose in the ranks of the Continental Army, became Washington's aide-de-camp, our nation's first Secretary of the Treasury, and majorly influenced our government as we practice it today. Alexander Hamilton took a stand in history against the stereotyping of illegitimacy by proving that in America, success is not just defined by a person's power and wealth, but by their talent and persistence.